Variety, Deadline, all the major outlets, and a lot of people in Hollywood, they're freaking out right now. They just can't understand what the fuck is going on here.
Yeah,
how did Bob Chapek, of all people, get renewed?
Wow. I got this all wrong. I thought they were talking about a lip balm. Chapek. Oh, geez, man. I was ready, prepared to I studied up on lip balms to talk about this. I'm screwed.
Not chapstick. Chapek.
Oh, Chapek stick. Yeah.
Chapek
That's what
stick.
he's hitting them with his Chapek stick.
Ooh.
Is that why it's so hard to get my Burt's Bees chapstick now? Because he's bought it all and you just get throwing it at people like Ari at
So this is what happens, people, when I'm away for 2 months. We all start making dad jokes. We all start making dad jokes.
It's all I do.
It's that bad,
In our defense, though, I think that we have done fairly good keeping up with the analysis on all things Chapek, and probably this is a game of 4D chess the whole thing. Very few believed it, but we were the ones not at all surprised when this announcement came. So he's been renewed now for 3 years, with the contract starting actually today. It's the first day of his new contract. And this is hot at the heels of the firing of Peter Rice, which is something that both Variety and Deadline Hollywood in particular are very sour about, because he was so well liked. I mean, they wanted him to replace Chapek, and here is Chapek replaced instead. What gives? Kamran, your take on all this. What's been going on ever since the riot against Chapek up till now and the renewal?
Well, this moment where Bob Chapek has been renewed has been coming for 18 months. And it began the moment that he actually asserted himself to be the CEO when he was being forced to stay under the shadow of Bob Iger in this very humiliating fashion, where he was a CEO and the 6 weeks later, Bob Iger was like, no, I'm back, right? And we had never really seen anything like that before. And I was on this channel, I was on Midnight's Edge when it was the catalytic events that started us to where we are today, when Gina Carano was fired. And it was on Midnight's Edge that at the time I said, look, if I were Chapek, I would now put out to the world that, look, I'm not in charge. This isn't my fault. We had all this wonderful stuff happening with Star Wars. We got all this attention off of the return of Luke Skywalker and the Mandalorian season 2 finale. And suddenly this crap happens. And it's because I'm not in charge. And these idiots are not letting me be in charge. But if you let me be in charge, I'll clean things up. I said that as an offhand comment here on Midnight's Edge in February, I think, of last year. And then within 3 weeks of that, we had that Forbes article that came out, right? Where it was saying exactly that Disney has a problem and Bob Chapek isn't going to be allowed to lead. And that was when I realized, oh man, this guy's dangerous. He did exactly what I thought a Machiavellian genius would do, but I was like, nobody has the guts to do that, right? And he did. And then over the next year, you've all been incredibly gracious of having me on Midnight's Edge, where I've been watching the events happen, and everything it has a reaction. There's not necessarily an equal one, but there's certainly an opposite reaction. Everything Chapek would do, the people that didn't want him there, the club, the traditional Hollywood structure, the sort of heiresses of this town that have corrupted our entertainment for the last decade, didn't like this guy coming in, and he wasn't part of their club. He was from the parks. He wasn't part of the cool crowd, and everything he would do, they would have a reaction to. And they often use the trades as their voice piece for that. And every time it happened on this channel, I'll be like, well, if I were Chapek, and if Chapek is the Machiavellian genius that I think he is, he's going to respond this way. And it sounded crazy. And every single time, within 4 or 5 weeks, he would respond that way. And he would then outsmart his adversaries because they didn't see it coming, right? I guess they weren't watching this channel, so they couldn't see what we were saying is about to happen to them. And that continued through every time we thought this guy was defeated. Throughout the entire process of last summer, when we thought that Indiana Jones, all that stuff is kind. Indiana Jones is going to be terrible. It's going to bring him down. And I said on Midnight's Edge, well, this guy, if I were him, I would reshoot the whole damn movie, right? I can't let him. People thought that was crazy. And then 2 weeks after we said that on this channel, he announced he's holding back the movie for a year for massive reshoots. So every single thing we've predicted here on Midnight's Edge has come true. And often sounding improbable, and so with a time delay, because it takes time to implement a strategy. And so the most extreme event that happened that leads us to this were the events earlier this year with the Florida sexual education bill that was called the Don't Say Gay bill by many people on the left and in Hollywood. And at the time, initially, Bob Chapek was very open. He said, we put out a memo at the beginning of the year. So we're going to take the company out of politics. He's very specific about Florida, said we support both parties there. That was shocking to an industry where it had become a religion, certainly since 2016, that you could not support the Republican Party, right? Because it was the party of Nazis, as how the industry saw it. So for him to even say that a balanced thing was seen as blasphemy. And so we had this massive, public uproar in the industry. We had the trades coming after him. We had people, maybe not a lot of them, but we had people protesting in front of the studios. And at the time, it looked like Chapek folded. He folded, right? That's what we all thought. Where he immediately goes by 180 degrees, says, I'm going to support this bill. I was wrong. I need to learn more about this. Does this what looks like a hostage video, putting out there, and then says, I'm going to go against Florida. And then Florida responds with these very intense political actions in return. Initially, even on my Patreon, when that happened, because I've seen that on this topic, people get very emotional in this industry. And, as Mike Ovitz learns that, you have, when we're talking about LGBTQ issues, you have to be cautious about that in this industry in particular. You can be misconstrued. And Mike Ovitz, who created CAA, once said that the gay mafia at Disney held him back, and that ended his career. The most powerful man in Hollywood. We haven't seen him in 20 years, right? So I thought maybe Chapek really has taken a hit here. Maybe he misplayed this and he's done. But on my Patreon, people saying, "Are you sure? You've been always saying this guy's a Machiavellian guy. Look a little deeper." And so they're re-encouraging me to give me the faith back. So I said, okay, well, if this guy's a Machiavellian genius, if he is, what if he isn't taking a fall here? What if Bob Chapek is actually doing, I study martial arts, as I know our friend Paulie Latino Slant, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And what if he's doing a judo or a jiu-jitsu move here? And those particular martial arts, they're not, I study karate and kung fu, and those are aggressive arts where you put yourself out there and you go against your opponent, right? Whereas arts like judo or jiu-jitsu or aikido are arts where you basically take the energy of your opponent. The energy of the opponent's coming at you, and you flip them and throw them on their back. And it's their own momentum that did it. You just knew how to move their momentum in that direction. And you didn't do anything, right? And so I was like, if this guy is a judo master, what would he do in this circumstance where the whole town is turned against him? He's been proclaimed anti-LGBTQ, all of that. Then what you do then is like, you go judo things. Like the momentum's coming at you. You can't fight this train head on. So you go, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. Let's do everything you want to do. Let's go up against Florida. You want to keep a brief moment of a same-sex kiss in Lightyear. I don't think that's going to work in the Middle East and Latin America, other places. You want to do that? Let's do it. We're going to keep it in there. We're going to distribute it that way. We're going to do everything you want to do because you're right and I'm wrong. That's judo. So what he did is he then managed to do two things. One is he silenced his critics, because when you're not fighting them, there's nothing to fight. Right. So you just anger over nothing. And so you can just keep grumbling. But what are you fighting? He's doing what you want to do, allegedly. Right. And then you just choose their momentum. You show them, is this going to work out the way you wanted? Oh, you didn't. Oh, Florida's going to take away all these legal privileges that we had, which is going to cost us potentially millions, even billions of dollars. That you didn't see that coming. I kind of saw that coming. But, let's keep playing this out. So all the things keep playing out. And in the moment that I knew something was going to be pivotal, I knew this moment. I don't know that I was on still on YouTube at the time when it happened, but I think I was on during this part of this, was when at the height of this Florida sex ed bill, we had this gentleman that a lot of people the people in the industry knew who he was. A lot of people in the fandom did not know. A gentleman named Peter Rice, who had come over from Fox, who was an old school executive, been around for decades, and he was seen by what I call the club, sort of the Hollywood institutionalized structure, as their guy. And Chapek, just like Iger had been their guy, and Chapek was this anomaly that they needed to get rid of. And so this guy was always sort of aiming for Chapek's job. And then when this event happened, he did something that shocked me. This Florida event, he put out his own press release, his personal press release, saying, I think Disney's on the wrong path. I think we're doing the wrong thing, where it's a matter of human rights and moral issues. So he's basically publicly condemning his boss in a press release. I was like, this guy's making a play for the throne. You only do that if you think you can overthrow the boss, right? That's crazy. So I was like, this guy better have all of his ducks in a row, because if Chapek is doing what I now think he's doing, which is judo on him, this guy's just revealed himself to be, an obvious open enemy who doesn't even respect the chain of command, that he should keep his concerns private and internal, rather puts them out in a press release. And so much like when Alexander Haig, when Reagan was shot, Alexander Haig proclaimed himself, I'm in charge, when actually it's supposed to be the vice president. You don't actually seize power like that, right? And it didn't work out for Haig, and it didn't work out for Peter Rice. So as I predicted at the time, or at least internally to my Patreon members, Peter Rice has put himself out there as the leader of this club faction that wants Chapek, and he's ordained himself the leader. And it's either going to be him or Chapek that's going to left standing. So suddenly, to a lot of people's surprise, about a month ago, Peter Rice out of nowhere gets fired. And this guy's had several years on his contract, tens of millions of dollars on that contract, and he's basically fired in a 7-minute meeting. He's pulled in and he's fired into this meeting, and it's done in a very humiliating fashion, and basically told, just get the hell out of here. Go, pack up your stuff. Just go, and you're done. And that's not normally Chapek's style. As we've seen, Chapek is a long-term player. He takes a while to get rid of his enemies. That's why a lot of people are grumbling. These people are still there. Cameron, you're full of crap. Look at these guys. These Lucasfilm jerks are still there. There's Flying Monkeys. Ms. Alonso's still there. Because his style is slow and steady, wins the race. But this guy made a play for his job publicly. So that can't stand. And so when he was fired, when that news came out, I knew that Chapek had won, because if you remember that day when Peter Rice was fired, the board put out a press release stating their support for Chapek. So I said, I think I know what happened here. And this leads us to this moment. I said, the Chapek heard this guy was not just putting out press releases saying, I can do a better job at this than Chapek can. He must have been making a play. There are certain members of the board that we know are more left-leaning and didn't support Chapek's agenda. And he probably reached out to them and said, hey, you want to get rid of this guy and vote me in? So when that machination started, when he's like, okay, this guy's making his move, right? Chapek probably just had a not official meeting, but privately talked to each board member, said, you see the numbers. You see the numbers from Florida. Lightyear's not going to work out. You already see the projections for it. It's either me or him. And this guy is just going to run you into the ground like Iger did. And even if you like his ideology, you don't like mine, do you still want to be members of the Disney board in 2 years? Or do you want this company to collapse and you all get humiliated, right? So it's me or him. And at that point, the board said, fine, damn it, fine. It's him. Go, get rid of him. So the moment Chapek had the support of the board, he went and got rid of that guy in the most ruthless fashion possible. And at that moment, I also knew he was renewed because he'd just gotten rid of his believed successor by the industry, right? And there was no one, Dana Walden, who was Peter Rice's old friend, immediately threw him under the bus. Dana Walden became appointed to that job, and she immediately put out a press release, not, praising Chapek. I mean, this is how Holly works. This is Peter Rice was her old buddy. They went through Fox together for decades. And the moment he's out, she's like, I'm on Team Chapek. And she puts out a press release in which she says, we are here to implement not Disney's agenda. She said in the press release, we're here to implement his agenda, which is Chapek. So she's like, I'm not a threat to you, boss. I'll play the good lieutenant. Don't fire me, right? And so she got in line. So she wasn't going to be a threat to the throne. So I was like, all right, well, this guy's got everything in place. He's going to get renewed. Because now, without an actual adversary, without his direct competitor Rice there, who was philosophically behind these things a lot of people didn't like, this reimagined Hollywood stuff, and he was pushing all this progressive stuff because he was a Hollywood Club member and thought that's what we do. Without him there, Chapek had no internal rival. One thing that held him back, he had Iger holding him back, and then he had this character aiming for his job. Right. So he never had he had these chains on him that every time he wanted to move, somebody could overthrow him. Now that guy's gone. So now is the moment where he'd have to say, all right, well, renew me now and show the town that I'm in charge so that I can now do what I did to Rice to a lot of other people. Now it's time for ruthless Chapek. So this is the moment. And a lot of people didn't believe it because this is the challenge. And this is why what Andre has created here on Midnight's Edge is so important, because there's so many perspectives that he welcomes here. And my perspective was allowed to be on it as well. And this is the challenge of when you're in a war, which is what this is. We're in a entertainment war, a cultural war within entertainment, right? And wars take time, and there are moves and there are counter moves. So just because you have a defeat or an apparent defeat in a battle, often what looks like a defeat is actually a strategic retreat or a feint. And, in Chapek, who I've often called a Sun Tzu of Hollywood, when this thing happened with Florida, I remember the phrase of Sun Tzu from The Art of War, where he said, when you are strong, appear to be weak. When you are weak, appear to be strong. So I said, Chapek is suddenly bowing down to these characters when he knows he's got the numbers behind him. Why is he doing that? Well, when you are strong, you appear to be weak, which caused Peter Rice to reveal himself, caused all these characters, including Ms. Alonso, to put out public things that criticizing the boss. I wrote an article on my Patreon where she publicly said things against the boss at a public event. I was like, Ms. Alonso's done too. I mean, they've all revealed themselves. So when you're strong, pretend to be weak. This is the challenge for the fans who want things to happen now and see just the event of the moment, is that you're not seeing it from a Sun Tzu perspective, that this is a war and it's not one man who has the power to do all this. It's a system, and you're trying to turn a ship around after it's hit an iceberg and somehow salvage it. And this guy's trying to do that, but that requires a lot of moves, and it requires some apparent losses that are then turned into victories. This guy's turned every loss into victory. Scarlett Johansson sues him. You know, she settles the moment Shang-Chi makes less money than Black Widow, right? He played it out, and then he honors Scarlett and puts her up like a true smart general. You know, you incorporate your enemy and you honor them, and he's given her all this other stuff, and that's water under the bridge now, which made Kevin Feige look like an idiot. That's another character that's been wounded by this. So with all that long spiel that I gave here, you have to see the broader picture. If you look at individual moves, you will become upset. You will become disillusioned. You will think you're being fed nonsense by people like myself and others who are trying to tell you what the chess game is. And you're just going to get angry, and the chess game is still going to play out. And then when the move happens, you don't see, you kind of feel silly, right? Because then you're like, why didn't I see this coming? Well, if you look back, of course it was coming. I said this thing was set in motion 18 months ago. The moment Chapek put out that Forbes article saying, I don't have power, I need power. This day was inevitable. And he's played every single move correctly and outsmarted all of his adversaries. Now he doesn't have adversaries. That's why the trades are frustrated, because there's no one they can use to remove him now. And so he's going to do what he's going to do. And so this is going to be the beginning of the adventure you guys have been waiting for.
That is an excellent summary, and it brings us neatly into the thing that I think everyone is wondering. Now, when he obviously has the support of the board, Susan Arnold, she came out and publicly supported him in a statement. And they also publicly supported him firing Peter Rice. What do you think is going to happen next? Because fine, there's no more organizational obstacles, but now you are left with every single one of the creatives. And all of the leaked images, not images, but leaked videos that came from this Disney closed town hall.
Reimagine Tomorrow thing.
Yeah, not just that, but the one where that too, where they spoke about their not so secret agenda and how proud they were of all of the social engineering and overt programming directed at children that they put into their entertainment. And we've seen multiple clips of this, like, for instance, Baymax going shopping for ladies' products, let's put it that way. So this is kind of what he has to deal with, activists and true believers at all levels among the creatives. How is he going to deal with that?
Well, I think now he's going to accelerate the process of removing and replacing people, because he's got, again, there's a reason why he gets, notice when he gets renewed. When does he get renewed? Within a few days of the failure of Lightyear, which he attempted to prevent. He said, look, I think some of the creative choices you've made here, I'm sure he doesn't have any problem with two old ladies kissing for a second. But he's like, but a lot of the world does have a problem with that. And, it was banned from all these Muslim countries. Friends of mine from Latin America were sending me pictures of their theaters that had signs in Spanish saying, warning signs that the theater put up saying, in Spanish, saying that Lightyear has American gender ideology, be careful. It was like a warning sign being put outside of theaters by the theater itself saying, you should just be alert. Americans are trying to brainwash you with gender ideology if you're going to take your children to this. So he knew that was coming. But he's like, all right, you creatives think you know better about where the market is. Okay, let's show it to you. And so the moment Lightyear bombs hard, this guy gets renewed for 3 years. If there's no other sign that you need as to what the plan is like, hey, you guys, I've now proven to you, I've judoed you. You're now on your back. So you're either on board with us becoming a profitable company and recognizing where culture and market is, not trying to change culture. That'll happen organically on its own, in its own. We don't have to change culture. We're not going to be able to because people resist being preached to. Let's just make money, right? And I think over the next 6 months, the executives, especially the ones that very foolishly outed themselves in the last several months as being his adversaries and being fanatics of this ideology, of this cultural ideology, they're out. And I think with Peter Rice gone, I mean, the reason you do something like that, when you do it, it has to be at a, firing Ms. Alonso or Pablo Hidalgo, that's small potatoes, right? When you do a ruthless, terrifying firing, it's got to be the big time. It's Peter Rice, where you bring in the office 7 minutes and just tell them, get the hell out of the building right now, right? That's where you do it, because that ripples down to everybody else. So those that are not going to be in line with the direction he's put in, that Dana Walden now says is his direction, we're going to do what he says, they're going to be out, and there's going to be no one to protect them, and there's going to be no one to give them a safe landing. So this is the moment where I think we're going to begin to see the thing that people have actually been wanting, which is, when's this person going to get fired? Well, they got no safety net now. And if you remember, when he fired Peter Rice, the way you do it is at the time Mr. Rice was being offered other jobs, including potentially going to David Zaslav's Warner.
Well, he had a 3-year contract they had to pay out. And let's go back for a moment to Lightyear, because I believe and agree with you when you said he already had this contract when he fired Peter Rice, which would have been before Lightyear. See, because that's what I think is they already kind of knew that Lightyear was going to tank. I think a lot more of this went into motion, and I'm curious to hear if you think the same thing, Cameron, went into motion when Doctor Strange failed to hit $1 billion. I think that was the bigger moment where they were like, okay, something's got to change here. And then, like you said, Peter Rice going out there clearly speaking out against Chapek and Victoria Alonso to a lesser extent, but Peter Rice more importantly, because he's in that upper echelon, right? And most of us said the same thing you did, and that one was that Walden took advantage of the situation, and she probably was like, yeah, this guy's going for your job, I got your back, kind of thing, blah blah blah.
This is like a best friend.
Exactly. Positioning herself basically into this point. But again, my question being, do you think that this more or less came about because Doctor Strange failed and they knew Lightyear was going to tank more so? Because like you said, I think that he already had this contract before Lightyear came out.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of these things. Doctor Strange was a major, stone on this pyramid tomb that was being built for the Wookiees, right? And I mean, I personally enjoyed most of the movie. I think the Wookiee is pretty minor in that personally, but it's a little bit there. But a lot of people just didn't go see it because they're just tired of it. They're just tired of all this crap. They don't trust Disney anymore, which is what I think is happening in some of the shows that are actually pretty good. People aren't watching them because they don't trust them anymore. And that was certainly there. I think the Lightyear thing, because Hollywood didn't perceive internally, there was not a conversation that Doctor Strange was a failure, even though it didn't hit $1 billion. There wasn't that. I didn't hear people grumbling about that. I did see the shock of Lightyear. Lightyear was a slap across their face. They really, surprisingly, could not see that coming, right? And if you saw the trade articles, they were saying Lightyear is going to do incredibly well, and their projections were massively off. Within 24 hours, before it being released, they were massively off. And so I think that was the shock wave that really cemented this whole situation, of which Doctor Strange was a long end process of the MCU becoming not that great, right? And I think it's going to turn around. I think it's already beginning to turn around. We'll get to that at some point today.
But yeah, to the Lightyear thing though here too, and this is one of the things you were talking about with the warning. Yeah, basically them firing. Let's get back to the Rice thing, because I agree with you 100% that it was all part of a situation where they knew he was not being loyal, and whether Walden came to him and told him that, and also you had the public thing. One thing you pointed out, and it was true, and this is what we kept telling everybody, is because there's a lot of people who are under the assumption that he fired Rice just to get rid of his competition, and we're like, that's not how it works. I use the analogy that it's a lot like the mafia, where basically you cannot kill another Don or boss without permission from all the others, right? Correct. So that's kind of the same thing here, is he had to get that permission, and this is him getting support from the board, basically, is what you're saying.
That's absolutely it. I mean, you're right. And it wasn't just Peter Rice has been a rival for him since the beginning, since the Fox merger. He's been a rival for him. In fact, my understanding is Peter Rice was up for the job, and the industry thought he's the one that is going to get the job when Iger steps back, right? That's what they thought. So they're like, well,
I believe so. Yeah, if you're right. Yeah,
and
Warner Brothers also supposedly was looking at Peter Rice and all this other stuff too. And like you said, he got an $8 million payout when he got fired. I think it was.
That's what it works. Even when you lose, you win. That's the industry, right? I think Mr. Chato knows that.
Well, the point I'm making is that they were willing to pay that money out. Yeah, go ahead.
It would have been cleaner to pay out what was in the new contract than to fight the old contract and try to figure out what the compensation for firing would be.
Correct.
People are going, oh my God, why did they have a new contract? Because it's clean. Here's the money. This is the amount. No lawyers involved. That's why they negotiated a new contract. That's as soon as I heard about that, that was my guess.
Yeah, and Peter, when he got that, he made phone calls to his board member allies and said, buddy, you're on your own. And then he realized, you know what, this ain't this. I ain't gonna sue. I'm just gonna settle this out because maybe I'll have another day. This ain't my day, right? So he's also playing the game, right? I do think he's knocked down for a while because
well, he knows he's gonna land somewhere.
He'll land somewhere, but Chapek did it so that he turned on all the other major job offers he had, and then he killed him. That's how ruthless you got to be. When this guy's taking it, you take away the safety net, and then you throw the guy out the window. That's when you do it, right?
I have a question about that because whenever someone is fired, even with prejudice, and we saw this, like for instance, over at Warner, David Zaslav, he went in and he fired Anne Sarnoff, like he shit canned her. But the official press release was, Anne Sarnoff steps back, and it was the same thing with. I was
gonna say Toby Emmerich was worse of a.
Toby Emmerich was worse because there was like no doubt. Like first he was announced to stay at least for a while, and then suddenly he was gone too.
Well, better yet, they even have him on a little thing to where they can string him along for however long they want to, because he's probably on a first look basis with Warner Brothers because he's got a production deal. But like Andre pointed out, they can just keep saying, no.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing, though, with Rice, he was not given any such courtesy as, he just chose to step back. No. He was fired. Mm-hmm. He was terminated with extreme prejudice, and everyone knows, and everyone is in shock about it. Of course, they pretend to be. But still, what does that mean in the industry? Because this is something that you've gone into before.
Yeah,
you don't fire people. They step back. They're allowed to save face. There was no face saving for Peter Rice here. The only face saving was the trades trying to say, but we like this guy. He's so nice. Everyone loves him. Why would Chapek do this? That's exactly only face saving.
That's exactly why, Andre, because you needed Chapek after enduring a couple of years of a lot of garbage from this town, a lot of disrespect, a lot of people underestimating him when he's actually, I think, one of the most dangerous people this town has ever seen, right? He needed at this moment to send a shockwave. You only get one shockwave, right? And he needed this one. And he needed to be, I'm going to take this guy out. I'm going to do it in the most absolutely ruthless way possible so that everyone now understands I am the boss, right? Zaslav did not need to do that because he was the unquestioned boss. He was the entrepreneur behind Discovery and the entrepreneur behind the Warner Brothers merger. So he could be gracious. Anne Sarnoff wasn't a threat to him. She was just somebody who screwed up the previous company that he bought. So he could let her go out with dignity. After what Chapek's endured, he can't let this go out. He couldn't let Rice go out with dignity. Now the town basically thought and still the trades call him incompetent, bubbling mismanager. But the reality is they're all scared of him now. They're all scared. The entire industry is terrified of him because he has shown that when he needs to, he will, absolutely like this image is, he will step and crush on his enemies. And so don't keep thinking, as Kevin Feige and others did, I can play this guy. And maybe they know he's a chess player, but I can outplay him. Sometimes a chess player is just going to take a gun and shoot you from across the chessboard. So you don't want to be playing chess with this guy, right? That was needed at this moment. You just need to do it once. You never need to do it again. And I don't think he's going to do it again. There's no need to anymore.
No. And that's one point I remember because I'm traditionally, I've pushed back quite a bit, Cameron, but that's just because somebody has to. right? Like sooner or later, somebody has to push in the other side or the other possibilities. But that was one time I could not really like. I was even floored when you got Kevin Feige out there going, I even underestimated this guy, right? When somebody that powerful in Hollywood, because we can sit here and talk all day about power and plays and everything like that and why he cannot fire Kathleen Kennedy. But that's because I got to remind people, Kathleen Kennedy is single-handedly the most powerful female producer in Hollywood. Now, on the other equation, you have Kevin Feige, who is single-handedly the most powerful producer in Hollywood. And when he's saying, yeah, I kind of underestimated this guy, who we all thought was just some Joe Schmo from the parks. So I think you're right. This guy, and I again give you credit, all credit where it's due, because I have pushed back from time to time on the idea that this guy really knew what the fuck he was doing. So I have to eat a little bit of crow on that, but there is also times where I've given you credit, and Kevin Feige was one of those. I do remember specifically saying, okay, now I see it. Because if this guy's saying it, then that means something, because Chapek is not fucking around here. And we're starting to see that play out. And the moment he got renewed was the moment it seems like the board's behind him. Now we're going to start seeing a change. And I think the big question people have on their minds now is, what do you see going forward as far as Chapek's game plan here? I think that's right, Andre. I think that's the big question on everybody's mind.
And I would like to expand that to the whole panel. I mean, because I've talked a lot here. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Andre. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I want to hear what you have to say, and we can see what the rest of the panel have to say about your take, and if they agree, disagree with it. So let's hear your take.
Well, very briefly, I'll say that I do think we're now going to see a market improvement in the kinds of stories. It's going to take time. There'll be stuff like, oh, this trans thing is happening with the guy buying feminine product. That's all. Remember, it's all stuff that was in the works over several years. It's now being broadcast.
I have submitted that it's going to take 2 years before we see any real change in output, because all the stuff that we see right now, from Lightyear, which came out just a couple of weeks ago, to the Baymax thing, to Willow, to Indiana Jones, all of these things were greenlit under Iger. These are all of his things, and maybe Chapek can do some limited influence, but he can't do anything major. Structurally, they are what they were at the time of being greenlit, and they were greenlit when he wasn't in power. Now he's in power. I have therefore submitted that we're not going to see the result of that until 2 years from now. When he has 1 year left on his now 3-year contract, that's when we're going to see Chapek's Disney.
That's why.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, my meme was perfectly timed.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw this. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, and we don't have to go in depth into the specifics of this. I think we can talk at the end about this. But I'm going to submit that we're seeing hints of that process of what's going to happen in 2 areas, in 2 projects that we know that he took over and reshot, which is Indiana Jones and Ms. Marvel. We haven't seen the Indiana Jones outcome. I hope it's actually good. I wouldn't mind. The last Indiana Jones movie was not very good. I hope this final salvage one ends up being watchable, maybe even better. And we can talk about this later in the process, but I have watched Ms. Marvel and I'm stunned by how good it is. And I've had talks with my friends who worked on the show who said the original version was unwatchable. My friends who worked on the show said the original version was unwatchable, and Chapek essentially reshot the entire thing. And now, in my opinion, is a very family-friendly, Disney-oriented show that is not what it was a year ago. So with that in mind, moving forward, that's what he's going to be doing. He won't have to reshoot the stuff that these people have screwed up, like Mr. Iger, right? But he will start telling people, okay, this new developmental process, I want you to look at these principles of family storytelling and mass marketing appeal. And that's what we're going to do moving forward, especially after Lightyear. So yes, Andre, you're right. It's going to take 2 years. I think we have some test runs, one that I personally think worked to my absolute surprise in Ms. Marvel. And I think we're going to see more of that. And I think that's what people need to, and again, it's going to require patience. When you see like, oh, look, this thing came out, it's wokey. I was like, yeah, this thing was made 18 months ago and he doesn't have time to reshoot every damn thing. He's got to focus on a few things. So just let it play out. But this is the new direction. And now I'm going to be silent and let our wonderful panel speak.
Mr. Chato, your thoughts on this?
Well, it is fascinating. My view on Hollywood is you just try to be nice enough that when you go out to Spago's, you've got someone to eat with. That to me sums up Hollywood. I do have a video coming out, which is part 2 in the War of the Woke. And why Hollywood specifically is so infused with this. So that's going to be a part 2. It will cover some of the things that we're talking about here. I am more interested in the parks. There was that one woman who announced that 50% of Disney parks are going to be trans and bisexual and have giant testicles hanging from the entrance that you can hit with a mariachi stick or something. I don't know. What's going to happen with her?
See, now I'm hearing that's more of a one-sided argument anyway, because it's like all the people in California versus the people in Florida is what you're seeing there. Yeah.
They parodied that view of the parks in The Boys. I don't know if you watched that series.
I'm watching it. I haven't gotten to that yet.
Well, there's one episode in season 3 where one of the characters wants to go to an amusement park. And of course, it's an incredibly unusual amusement park that reflects the opinions and desire to see things like that in the park. And I don't see Disney happening that way. I don't see that occurring at all. And we've been talking about the devaluation of the Disney experience, people upset with the parks, with the movies, all different facets of it. They're not happy with Disney Plus. It didn't have the content that they promised. And then all these cataclysmic shifts seem to happen, and essentially trying to meet these expectations from employees to managements to fans. And we knew that this was something major was going to happen. And of course, the stock prices drop. And that was the perfect time for anybody to go in and say, just when it seems like things can't get any worse, you just walk in and say, oh, yes, things can get worse. Look what's happening. People are afraid to go see Disney films now. They're afraid to walk and buy a ticket for their children to go see something that would have normally been a family experience, an enjoyable thing. And they can't even go to that now because there are warning signs outside warning people about the content of it. So
it would have been helpful if they didn't taser us as we walked in.
Like, I think it's ironic.
That would have made it more experience.
It didn't have to go this far.
Yeah.
And these creatives who felt they had to express themselves artistically this way should not have been with Disney, because it's a family-friendly company that always had traditional values. And people are shocked when they make a story like Ms. Marvel that is completely traditional, very conservative, fun family entertainment. Oh my goodness, this is the type of stuff that I grew up watching from Disney. This is exactly the type of thing that my mother would say, well, that's a nice program. And I feel safe letting my daughter watch it and my grandchildren watch it. Isn't that what Disney is supposed to be?
Well, except it is ethnic. It is ethnic. That
yes,
I find the United States is very, very afraid of ethnic things.
Mm-hmm. Well,
which is unfortunate because we're all descended. If I may just interrupt for a second, because on my Patreon, and we don't have to derail this into Ms. Marvel, but I just want to say on my Patreon, people have been saying, and people on my Patreon fight a lot. Like people, there's 50% love Obi-Wan, 50% hate Obi-Wan. So we're going to believe whatever Cameron says. But people have been watching going, this thing's shockingly good. And then the stories, I'm getting DMs and stories are like, this reminds me of my Italian grandfather. This reminds me of my Greek aunt, because we all came, whether we're wokey now, we all came from old school.
Well, that's kind of what I've been hearing too.
Is Toronto, and I haven't seen it because I don't subscribe to Disney Plus, but all my entertainment chums here in Toronto have been telling me that Miss Marvel is fantastic.
No, that's what I've been hearing too. Is you take the superhero aspect out of it, it's just basically like your typical family comedy, which
it's Mr. Belvedere. It's Mr. Belvedere with superpowers. It's an 80s family comedy.
Well, and it kind of reminds me almost of this one that Paul's been watching lately, and I saw a preview for with Paulie, and Paulie's been trying to get me to watch too, and it's called Gordita. Over on Hulu.
I also think that at some point Disney has to accept that the people who are giving them profits have a certain desire to see certain material.
Yep.
And they're going to have to just accept that. And they're going to have to, be quiet and just produce stuff that is family friendly and is acceptable to the majority of people who are buying tickets, who are subscribing to their stuff, who are looking forward to visiting the parks. They don't want to go to the park and find an experience that is not what they're expecting from Disney. And until they accept that, they're going to be in trouble. I think that they're in the process of accepting it. Mm-hmm. Even when they don't want to accept it, they're accepting it now. And they're very lucky that the change is happening now, because I have a feeling if they waited, let's say, to the end of the year things would have been very, 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 very bad. I don't think they would have been able to turn around.
So there's a couple things I want to add. Sorry, Andre.
Yeah, no, then you add them, and then I have a question for Kamran afterwards. But
so there a couple things. I love.
Got to finish answering the first one yet.
I love the press. I love all the pundits. When somebody is down, it's disaster. It's the end. There's no coming back. But you build things back one project at a time, and you just, that's the only way to do it, is that the next project you release builds back trust. It's not hard to do. You just have to do it. But it's kind of funny. It's the press in Hollywood is very similar to the press for the World Series. Oh, the team is out. It's 3 down. There's no way they're going to come back. Their pitching is lousy, and then they come back. And then the press goes, "What a brilliant job the coach did." It's like the press are idiots, and they love both bad stories and they love a redemption story. So once the redemption starts, watch all the positive news start hitting, because the press are whores. And so, that's the main thing I wanted to talk about. So just wait, good luck to Chapek. It's just, one show at a time, and he'll, build everything back up. It's not, it just takes time.
Yeah. Well, to get back to
quickly,
I was just going to say, go ahead. The question was originally, what do you think Chapek's plan is going to be going forward?
Yeah, one at a time. That's the plan. Fix one thing one at a time. Return the confidence.
I think you said culture, right, Andre?
Yeah, culture. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, just that I'm always amazed that Kamran can get there before the rest of us. But it's overall, it's an excellent assessment of what Chapek was doing the entire time, and whether or not there will be any more high profile people leaving the company. I think there are 4 or 5 people that have been lined up to be shown the door in the very near future. And I know we haven't gotten there yet, but I think one of those primarily is in Marvel, and I think she is going to say see ya real soon.
And you're right. It's what I wrote about on my Patreon, which is that the moment she went out she was getting an award or something, and she condemned essentially her boss, Chapek. I was like, dude, you're not even Peter Rice. You're this low-level executive in this sub company. What are you doing? You can't be saying crap about the boss in a
Well, it's kind of worse than that for her, because from what we've been hearing, she's been kind of being groomed to be taking Kevin Feige's place.
And also, the problems with Doctor Strange, from what we've been hearing, were her fault. Kevin Feige didn't micromanage Doctor Strange. Victoria Alonso did. Victoria Alonso was the one that insisted on the story being the story that it was. And the only thing that I heard is that the reshoots, and these may have been mandated by Chapek, was to make what's her name? The name again of the new character,
America Chavez, a lot more likable.
Yeah, to make her more likable, because
she was unlikable.
Yeah, she was likable in the version that I saw. I enjoyed much.
And that was post reshoot, because the reshoots, it was like reshot for 3 months. That was basically reshoot every single America Chavez scene, because through no fault of the actress, it was the instructions by Alonso. Like, no, you have to be better than him. Like, he's just a white man, so you're going to belittle him.
You can tell they did some kind of shift there. But no, to get back to the main topic, then script. What do you think Chapek's plan is going to be going forward?
Well, I know a lot of certain fans are not going to like this answer, but unfortunately for Disney, Marvel is the priority right now. They need to make sure that doesn't fall any further, and Star Wars is going to be put on the back burner. And right now, I think Chapek's plan will probably be, let's sort out Marvel and make sure that, because they have on their slate of characters that they're going to be introducing into the franchise, there's some very prominent popular characters such as Fantastic Four and X-Men. And Fantastic Four is kind of a curse in Hollywood. No one's been able to nail it except for Roger Corman, and the reason that didn't succeed was, aside from a minuscule budget, he had no intention of ever releasing it anyways. So if Chapek can get that right, and that on that ship on set on a proper course, then he can start focusing on Star Wars. And again, that's going to take a couple of years. As what I said on this channel a little over 2 years ago, 2024 is going to be the year where all this stuff is kind of going to be on the out of the zeitgeist of Hollywood, and we'll be back in a more profit-oriented perspective. And so I think, yes, he's going to focus on Marvel first, then Disney. And I'm really hoping that Chapek and Zaslav have essentially a general measuring contest to see how many woke people they can fire the quickest and fastest and turn their companies around. Because Warner Brothers is very much on the trailing side of things. And as I also predicted on this channel, that Paramount and Paramount Plus is something to look at, because they're actually taking a couple of steps closer towards the new direction of Hollywood, the more profitable one, than anyone was ever expecting. And that's why, I mean, I have a bias to Paramount. It's where I started with an internship.
No, but you're 100% right, though, on that.
But yeah, it looks like they have a couple of more competent people over there right now that are speaking up. And I'm really hoping that that level of competence grows with them and with some of the other studios, so that we can actually have some more opportunities and more content, and less stress about what we want to go watch, knowing that we're probably going to be fed a preachy ideology, as opposed to, I like the subtext ideology, the idea where it's like, yeah, you can walk away with it and just enjoy the movie, or you can walk away with it and really feel something extra and think about a topic that maybe you never thought about before. And it's not going to ruin your day or anyone else's day to discuss it. That right. Needs to be the norm when it comes to entertainment.
So
I agree with you.
I'm sorry, Tom. I just had a question and the panel may know this. Tom, you may know this. I'd heard something about Ms. Alonso putting out a book. Or I heard somewhere that she. So to me, that's all. Whenever you start getting accolades and you're putting out a book, you're like your biography. I mean, what is this woman in her 30s, 40s? I mean, what do you got time? You got something to say in a book right now? Wait another 20 years, right? But when you're doing that, it's a really good time to transition, because you're essentially putting your new Match.com profile out there. Here's my book. Anyone want to hire me? I mean,
well, that or she's getting ready to hold people hostage with blackmail.
Well, there was two possibilities, because again, Marvel Studios invented a new position for her to take on, because she's essentially shepherding someone below her. And there's two options to that. Either the position is her exit of the company and she's going to start doing her own thing, or it's her position to allow her to take over Kevin Feige. But I don't think Kevin Feige wants to leave Marvel at any time soon, because he's still able to ride that success in the accolades and take all the credit for its success, even though he's probably maybe 30% of the actual contributing factor to it. There's a lot of other players there that I would not be surprised that a lot of people in the fandom don't even know their names of.
He'll rise her. He's not going to let her take it. I mean, Feige's going to leave when he's going to leave, but he's not going to let her take his job.
No, to be honest, I think Victoria is doing right now what James Gunn was supposed to do. But going off of what Script said, I agree with him almost 100%. The only thing I'm not so sure about is I'm not so sure we're going to see as many firings on the Disney side as we did over on the Warner side. Because that's a little bit of a different situation. And the reason I say this is, because Rice was done to send a message, right? And on the show, Cameron and I compared it to the scene in Kill Bill when Lucy Liu cuts that other guy's heads off, and he goes, now, if anybody's got anything else to say, now's the fucking time, because that's kind of what that was. And that was sending a message to all the woke people in the studio that if this is the way you're going to do it, then this is what's going to happen. So he don't have to fire all these people, but it'll get them in line. Like, what's her face right underneath him now is a perfect example of that, right? So I think Victoria Alonso's days are numbered. I think you guys are right on her. I think a few high profile people might get shit canned, but I think Script's right. Don't expect it to be Kathleen Kennedy or anybody like that. I think most of he's not going to micromanage. At least this is what I think he's going to do going forward. I don't think he's going to micromanage everything so much. Sure, he's going to key in on Marvel because that is their bread and butter. But outside of that, I don't think he's going to kind of dip his toes into everything. I don't expect Star Wars to get any major shifts or changes anytime soon. We are hearing, though, what Script did say, and I think he's correct, that a lot of things are kind of being put on the back burner over at Star Wars, because now you got Taika Waititi out there saying that, I haven't seen my script yet for my movie. Yeah. So his movie's supposed to be out when? 2020? Was it 24?
No, next year.
23 or 24.
Ryan Johnson trilogy. I don't think we're going to see that.
Yeah.
No. Waititi's doing his own property, right? His own Star Wars thing. He says he hasn't even seen a script yet.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I think like Ryan Johnson.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. So I think Script's right in that respect, that as far as Star Wars goes, a lot of that's going to be put on the back burner, and he's going to concentrate on Marvel going forward and see what he can do to try and right that ship more so, and the animation side. We are completely forgetting about that. Pixar is burning down right now.
Yep.
Okay, that is one of their biggest things they have in their slate of movies usually, and they haven't had a hit in 2-3 years now. Not since I think Toy Story 4, technically, if you really want to get technical about it. And the same thing on their animation side. They buried Encanto, and it succeeded despite that. But almost every other thing they put out there on the animation side has failed. So he really has to figure out what the fuck is going on. And when we can tell him what the answer is, you got rid of John Lasseter. Right? Like, so he's got to find somebody who can, and that's what I keep hearing from the other side of it is that he's got to find somebody to come in and take over at Pixar and animation side to really reinvigorate that and figure out what the fuck is going on. Because we talk about the wokiness in Lucasfilm, we talk about the wokiness in Marvel. We have ignored the wokiness that's going on in the animation and Pixar department, and look where that got them.
Well, on both sides. I mean, it's both animation departments.
Yes, and that's my point. Look where that got them. We got Lightyear out of that now.
Can I make a prediction? Can I make a prediction, Andre?
Yes, prediction time.
Tom.
Big
I'd
screen,
like to make a
big
prediction.
screen,
big screen.
Yeah.
You want to make a big screen? So I'm going to make a prediction here because our friend Tom here has rightly raised the issue of what's going to happen to Pixar and whether it's going to be people fired and all that. So I'm going to make a prediction here. I'm going to predict that the surprise move that I think Mr. Chapek is going to make, perhaps even this year, before the end of the year, will be to make a deal to purchase Skydance and bring John Lasseter back in to the Disney fold and probably unite or meld or fold into one or the other, Pixar into Skydance, vice versa, or merge them, so that essentially that would be, because he is now, Mr. Chapek is now in the I don't care what you guys think anymore. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I've shown you that with Peter Rice. So bringing John Lasseter back in and essentially putting him back in charge of the Pixar machine by merging it with Skydance would be the smartest move to do, because he knows that the magic of Pixar is John Lasseter. It's not. The reality is the company doesn't have another Lasseter. When he left, if it wasn't Lasseter, it should have continued its magic. It was always him.
Well, they lost Brad Bird also.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, he took them with him. Yeah.
I just don't know that they can. I don't know that they can continue without him. And if I were Chapek, and so far I'm trying to think as a Machiavellian dude, it's both a way to fix the problem and also, guess who's in charge here in this town, right? You all push this guy out, I'm pushing him back in. And that really silences the wokies. So I think that's a very real possibility. If I were his little bird on his shoulder, I'd be saying, you got to be thinking of doing that. I think he's already thinking of doing that.